Hello, I'd like to welcome you to the second chapter of the book of Zephaniah, where it continues. The first chapter was uh, showing God's anger against a situation. It was the people weren't uh, brought out as much as they are in the second chapter, identified as much. And we'll start again. Continue. Sinak thite ke sin the thite to ethnos to apaithevton. The apaithevton, uninstructed, be gathered together and bound together, O uninstructed nation, ethnos, with the word ethnic. So this O nation, uninstructed nation, he could be talking about any nation, really, even today. It's really not known. He doesn't specifically pick out anything right here in this verse, so we can even apply it to our own day. And then verse 2, pro tu genesthe imas ozanthos paraporevomenon imera pros tu elpelthin ephimas orgin kyriou pro tu epelthin ep or f imas imeran orgis thimu kyriou. Be gathered together in this uninstructed nation before we have the word prologue. It's a word before with a prologue and the log being a word. Before you're becoming as a flower, an anthos. We have that's a prefix for flowers in English. Before you're becoming as a flower, passing the day, emera, ephemeral being the derivative. Before, pros, again, this is a different pros, but before the coming upon you, the wrath of the Lord, the orgin, we have the orgy as the derivative, a little bit different English meaning is through the ages, but that's what the derivative is, the Lord, Kyriou, the Kyria eleison, pro, the coming upon you, emeron, the day, ephemeral again, orgis, the same as before, thimu, kyriou, the thimu is added here, the rage. We have a word on the word pamphlet on day, anger, wrath, Lord, not rage. Rage is a little bit, it's a different word, and we'll feature that in another pamphlet, but anger, the day of the anger, this is what this brochure is on, anger and wrath. Basically, I used the words synonymously. I probably should have chosen one over the other, but I didn't, and so it's printed that way. But you can either put rage or wrath in all these places where the 3709 orgi appears, the orgin, and then down below. The day of the Lord, we're told, behold, the day of the Lord comes, incurable rage and anger, the thimu and anger, to make the world desolate and to destroy sinners from out of it. This is God's purpose, not to destroy the believers, of course, and this was in Isaiah 13:9. In 13:13 he says, for the heaven shall be enraged, and the earth shall be shaken from out of its foundation, because of the rage of the anger of the Lord of hosts, in the day which ever his rage should come about. So we see here in this how the usage is almost the orgy. It can be standalone as a wrath or an anger, but it's an intensity that God has of the rage, which is the thimu. We have the Greek English word fume from that. In Lamentations 1:12, the one uttering a sound to me humbled me, the Lord, in a day of anger of his rage. And then in 2:1 he continues in Lamentations, oh how the Lord darkened his anger for the daughter of Zion. He hurled down from out of heaven unto the earth the glory of Israel, and he remembered not the footstool of his feet in a day of wrath of his rage. That doesn't have the day, but a day. And so it's interesting to see and how it's the day or a day. And then in Lamentations 2:21 he continues, the boy and old man went to bed on the ground in the street. My virgins and my young men went into captivity by broadsword. By famine you killed, in the day of your anger you cut up, you spared not. You called, as in the day of holiday, for my sojourners round about. And there was not in the day of anger of the Lord one being rescued and being left behind, as I prevailed and I filled all my enemies. Now the day there I have, it's in italics, so I added the day for clarity's sake. Uh, it could be a day of anger of the Lord. Maybe it should be. I'm going through a lot of this years later after I translated some of these things, and I've learned a lot. It continues in Ezekiel 7:19 about this day. Their silver shall be tossed in the squares, and their gold shall not be able to rescue them in a day of wrath of the Lord. So I used wrath there. That day is a mighty day of anger. Zephaniah 1:15 to 18, a day of affliction and distress and darkness, a day of cloud and fog, a day of trumpet and a cry against the fortified cities and against the high corners. And I will squeeze out the men, and they shall go as blind men, for against the Lord they led into sin. And he shall pour out their blood as dust, and their flesh as dung, and their silver and their gold in no way shall be able to rescue them in the day of the anger of the Lord. And then he continues in the next, that was in the first chapter of Zephaniah. We went to the last seminar. And then in the next chapter he says, on account of this, wait for me, says the Lord, for the day of my rising up, for a testimony, for my judgment shall be for a gathering of nations, to take kings, to pour out upon them all of my anger, the anger of my rage, or the wrath of my rage. For all the earth shall be consumed by the fire of my zeal. And then it talks about a day of the wrath of God, not the Lord. But according to your hardness and impenitent heart, you treasure up for yourself wrath in the day of wrath, and of revelation of righteous judgment of God. In Romans 2:5 it says that. In Revelation 6:16 and 17, fall upon us and hide us from the face of the one sitting upon the throne and from the anger of the Lamb. For is come the great day of his anger, and who is able to stand? So the day of the wrath of the Lamb, the day of the wrath of God, the day of the wrath of the Lord. And all those wraths could be anger. And rage is in some of these verses, and rage is another word that we will be featuring in another word on the word study. We'll continue in verse 3. Zitisate ton Kyrion, Pontus, tapini is. Crema ergaziste, ke dikasini zitisate, ke apokrinaste avta, opos skepasthite in imera orgis Kyriou. Seek the Lord, Kyrion, all upon the humble ones of the geology of the earth. Ergaziste, ergonomics, work, equity, and seek righteousness, and answer them accordingly, so that you should be sheltered in a day of the wrath of the Lord, or the day of the wrath of the Lord. As you see, it's not, the is not in there. So the humble ones of the earth will find a shelter in the day of the wrath of the Lord. The wrath is against the ungodly. And continue in verse 4. Dioti Gaza virpas meni este ke Askelon isaphanismon ke azotos mesim vrias ekriphysite ke akaron ekrizothisite. For Gaza will be for plundering. So this is a future time. When in the future that Zephaniah here is he talking about? Is it talking about soon to that time that he was living in? Or is it talking about a future time? could be even today, for Gaza's in the news every day on most of what's going on with the Palestinians, and this is exactly where this was. Is the Gaza Strip of today, and these towns are there. They will be for plundering, and Ashkelon for extinction. It's still there today, so it haven't. If it was back in his time, if it's extinct, then it shouldn't be there today, but it is. So what does that lead us to believe? And Ashdod at midday shall be cast forth, and Ekron shall be rooted out. There's a word ekrizothisate from rhizo, a root, and ek to in the verb to root out. You can add that in English derivatives. So these cities in Gaza will, more or less, it says it's not going to be much there, but there are today. And there are a lot of problems going on in that area. And 5, it continues, Oe e katikuntes to skinisma tis thalasis, pariki kriton, logos kyriou ephimas kanaan gi allophilon, ke apollo imas ek katikias. Woe, Oe, we have the almost a Hebrew transliteration into the Greek into the English, oe, the ones dwelling. Now we see this blue purple number, and that's the nominative definite article of the subject of the sentence. We will have that in all the 3588s. In this chapter, we'll have the nominative. This is nominative plural. It could be masculine, feminine, or neuter, singular, masculine, feminine, neuter, plural in the nominative. So woe, the ones dwelling the measured out land of the sea. This is still probably the Gaza because it's right on the ocean. Sojourners of Cretan. So kind of saying that they're from Crete, which is an interesting thing. Some of these people that were living in that place. Crete is quite a ways over towards Greece, and it's interesting with the Phoenicians and these people who lived on this part of the Mediterranean where Israel was at, and the Phoenician alphabet and the Greek alphabet, which came first, the Phoenician or the Greek and the Phoenician, and all this is very interesting, going back thousands of years here. Anyway, it continues, Logos Kyriou ephimas Kanaan, gi allophilon, ke apollo imas ek katikias, and the word, the Logos of the Lord, Kyriou, against you, O Canaan. You can almost see that there's a direct transliteration of the name. A gi, land, a genealogy of the allophilon. Other places it spells out Philistim with a phi, ipsilon, lambda, on and on. But and that's the proper name. This is allophilon can also be a condition in some places, like the Philistine. It's a derogatory word. And today we have the Palestinians, not to say that it's derogatory because of them, but that just happens to be the way the name word has changed. And today we have the Palestinians. The allophilon, in this case here, the other allo is other, and phylon, a phylum, as a classification in when we classify animals and plants, or plants actually. And I will destroy you, ek, from, we have eccentric from the center, from your dwelling, the katikias. The iki, again, whenever you see the iki, has to do with house or dwelling, something like that. And verse 6, ke este kriti nomi pimnion ke mandra provaton. And Crete shall be a pasture of flocks. Crete, well, it's still around today. I was just in Greece, and I didn't go to the island of Crete, but I assure you it's still there, and many people and things are going on there. It's not just a pasture for flocks. So that gives you a little more information of the time line of this judgment. And a haven for sheep. Well, there are a lot of sheep and flocks though on these islands, and those on the island of Patmos, where John wrote book of Revelation. And there are sheep there, and the havens for the sheep. It's interesting to actually see these. And then verse 7, it continues, Ke este to skinis matis thalasis tis peace, iku, Iuda, epaftus, nemisonte entis ikis askolonos, thielis, catalisusin apo prosopu ion is Iuda, oti episkepte aftus, Kyrios otheos aftu. And then I'll do that next one in the K apostrepsy a little bit later. And one, the measured out piece of land, a skinisma. Skini was a cord that had knots on it that could measure things by people that surveyors. And the measured out piece of land by the sea will be for the remnant of the house of Israel. Gaza is measured out and pretty much know the bounds of it, and it's for the remnant of the house of, I said Israel, the house of Judah. The Iku, we have the Katikias up above here, and the Iku, the house. Upon them they shall pasture in the houses of Ashkelon, which is in that Gaza area and the down below. The Ikis, houses. In the afternoon they shall rest up from in front of the sons of Judah, for the Lord their God shall visit them. Just kind of confusing in here, the in front of the sons of Judah. Who is the they? Is that the Palestinians in resting up in front of the sons of Judah? How is that? Well, I'm not quite sure. But the Lord their God shall visit them. Now, who's the them? The sons of Judah, or these they? Interesting how these pronouns are thrown around, and it's sometimes very difficult for a person to figure out which one's going with which one. But anyway, the Lord, Kyrios, Theos, theology, shall visit, Eskeptete, shall visit them, and he shall return. Apostrepsy, we have an apostrophe, a digression or a discourse. In this case, he will return their captivity. Aikmalosian afton. And then he changes a little bit from Gaza, and he says, Ikusa onidis mus Moab, ke kondilis mus ion amon, in is onidison ton leon mu, ke emegalin nonto epi ta oria mu. I heard ikusa, acoustics, the derivative, the scorns of Moab. Now the Moabites, they were in what's today Jordan. The southern part of Jordan were the Midianites, and then up above them the Edomites close to the Sinai across the river Jordan. Then above them were the Moabites, which were almost straight across from close to Jerusalem, and then Ammon, which was up a little bit further north, and then Gilead above that, and Bashan, and all those were in Jordan. I heard the scorns of Moab and the ill treatment by the sons of Ammon. Ammon, the Ammonites. Ammon is the capital of Jordan, in which they berated my people, laity, and emegalin nonto, mega is magnify, has to do with great, and they magnified themselves. It's a verb. Epi, over. Epiphany is something that's over, and over my borders, Oriah, rather, and we have the derivative horizon. Thea tuto zo ego legi Kyrios ton dynamion o theos Israel, dioti Moav o Sodoma este, ke ii Amon os Gomorrah, ke Damascos ek lelimeni, ke os Thimonia alos iston Iona, ke e Katalapi leumu diarponte aftus, ke e katalapi ethnus mu kleronomisusin aftus. Long verse here, and it's on account of this as I live, the ego, the personal pronoun. As legi, whenever we have the leg or logos, has to do with speech. Says the Lord, Kyrios, of the dynamion, dynamite, the power, the forces. The God, Theos, Israel. That Moab will be as Sodom. Moab, the Moabites aren't around today, so that could be talking about the Moabite people of that period of time. Now it's they're pretty much all speaking Arabic. And so Moab will be as Sodom, and the sons of Ammon as Gomorrah. Ammon is the capital of Jordan today, so they're going to be as Gomorrah. It's talking about the people, then a lot of these peoples are gone and they've been replaced by others. Or it could be talking about a future where these areas, if it's talking about area, then they're still around and they haven't been completely erased. It doesn't say cities here and so far, but now it does. And Damascus ceasing. So the first other place, Moab, Ammon, if you're looking at it as a people, they were gone. But if you're looking at it as a place, they still exist, especially Damascus. It's the real city. And Damascus is ceasing, but it hasn't ceased. One of the oldest cities in the world. Another hint to the timeline of this prophecy. And it will be as a heap of salt into the Iona, Eon. And so Damascus is going to be as a heap of salt. Well, that hasn't ever happened. So another clue. And the remnants of my people, laity, shall plunder them, who is his people, Israel, Judah. And the remnants of my nation, and that's the all these purples are the nominative, the subjects of my ethnus, ethnic. As a nation, and it's used in the New Testament as Gentiles, interestingly. The remnants of my nation shall inherit them. It talks about in the last 10 chapters of the book of Ezekiel how the boundaries of Israel will go over to the Tigris-Euphrates area and will be expanded than what it is, or what it was when it was written in Ezekiel. Verse 10, avtis, anti tis ivreos avton, dioti oni thison, ke emegalin thison, epi kyrion ton pantokratora. So it's interesting seeing how this is to them. Now, who's to them? We were just talking about this remnants, which is obviously Israel and the remnants of my people. Now, but now this avtis is not to Israel. It's going back to, I believe, Damascus and these other places. So this is to them far on T. It's a prefix meaning opposite or against, antiseptic is something against. This is for them, for their insolence, because they berated and magnified themselves. The mega, should have had that. That should be highlighted in yellow. They magnified themselves over the Lord, pantokratora. Again, the pan, all, and the krato, we have the democrat, the might of the people, the almighty. Then verse 11, it continues. Epiphanisate Kyrios epaftus ke exolothrevse pantus tus theus ton ethnon tis gis ke proskinisus sin afto ekastos ek tu topu aftu pase e nisi ton ethnon. Well, this is an interesting verse. Okay, first it starts up epiphanisate. We have a epiphany is the derivative, 2014, epiphany. The Lord shall have an epiphany, shall appear. That's what it means. The Kyrios. The epiphany is used in the liturgy and liturgical services for the Lord's appearance. The Lord shall appear against them. Who is this? Them is these countries these places in the future, Damascus, Ammon. And he shall utterly destroy Pan, all the gods. What gods do these people in that area have now, and what will they have in the future? We can look and see. And so all these gods, the theus, of the ethnon, of the nations of the earth. These nations of the earth, and says all the gods of the nations of the earth. So it's not just the ones of Damascus, but all the gods of the ethnon, ethnic, and gees, geology. And they shall do obeisance to him. Who's going to do obeisance? All these people had these other gods. And there again, that's that proskenisu scene. When it's, as I was mentioning, it's one of my pet peeves. It's changed into worship, which today means playing guitars and singing, which is wonderful and praise, but it's not the same thing. That whenever you see a uh, worship in the King James, and no, it's not anything to do with this music. It has to do with bowing down and doing obeisance, falling on your knees to God in this case. Each act from his topu, the place, topography is a place, map making, topography, his place. All the Nisi, Ton, Ethnon, all the islands of the nations. That's interesting. So now he's making a broad sweep. It's gone from Moab and Ammon and Damascus into the whole world, all the nations. The Nisi, we have Polynesia as a derivative. Nisi, islands, Ethnon, continents, possibly. Could be talking about here. And it continues in verse 12. Now it goes over to, we see judgment against the Ethiopian Assyria. So now it changes. Ke emis Aethiopes travmatie rompheas mu este. And you, O Ethiopians. Well, Ethiopia was actually a part of the Sudan in the early period. It's right south of Egypt, and Ethiopia took the name of the country, but the Ethiopians were considered the people that were right below the Egyptians. It wasn't as definite with the actual locations, but this is where these people, where they came from. And they were defeated by Asa, the king of Israel, back in the 800 years BC, something like that, 300 years earlier than this. So the Ethiopians had already been destroyed by Asa, and it doesn't mention any other place. So this again is probably in the future. And you Ethiopians are the slain of my broadsword, the travmatie. We have trauma. You can add that in the English derivatives. And ke ek tani tin hira aftu epi voran ke apoli ton assyrion ke thesi tin ninevei is aphanismon anidron os erimon. And he will stretch out his hand, the hira, the chiropractor, the derivative, against or upon the voran. We have aurora borealis, the borealis, voran, the north. And he shall destroy the Assyrion, and he shall establish Nineveh for aphanismon, extinction. A phantom is the water. A waterless, anidron, hydro is derivative for water, a waterless extinction. Nineveh, as we mentioned in the book of Nahum, which we just went through, and Jonah, became for extinction by the time Xenophon went through there with the Greek army. There was nothing there. It was all flat. And that's what this is talking about. So Nineveh is going to be a place of extinction. Verse 14, it continues. Ke nemisonte in meso aftis pimnia, ke pantata theria tis gis, ke hameleontes, ke echini entis phatnomasin aftis, kitas thesonte, ke theria phonisi en tis theorigmasin aftis, ke korakas en tis pilosin aftis, theoti kedros to anastima aftis. And we'll follow the numbers here. Flocks, number one. Flocks 2 shall feed in, 3 that should have been highlighted. Meso in the midst. We have a Mesopotamia, the middle of the rivers, then shall feed in the midst of her. And all Panta, the wild beasts of the geese of the earth, and Haimaileontus, chameleons. It's almost a direct transliteration. Camel lions. I don't know why the word was picked, but they're like lizards now. Well, they were then too. You can add that to English derivatives because it's in orange. And hedgehogs shall make a bed in, that should have been highlighted, in her fretwork. So these animals are going to be there without anybody to disturb them. They're just going to be running around with their own, they have their own little lives. And wild beasts like the donkeys. And so phonesi, we have a telephone, talking phone, sounding out loud in her ditches. And crows, koracus, almost if you make the crow, you can see the similarity. And again, the preposition in her gatehouses. So these gatehouses, Nineveh had like 15 huge gatehouses for the city, and they were all covered over eventually. And so probably all these years, hundreds of years, it was destroyed, and animals were living in these places until the sands finally covered it up. For her height was as the cedar, the kedros, cedar kedros, see the similarity, her height. And it continues in 15, avti e polis e favlistria e katikusa ep, and we'll continue in the next column there in a second. This is the city, the polis, favlistria, the heedless city. And now which city is talking about? Still talking about Nineveh, the polis, metropolis is a derivative. The one dwelling, the katikusa, the iku, the economy, dwelling city, has to do with a house or a home rather. The one dwelling upon hope, who says, Alpidi, e legusa anti cardia aftis, ego imi, ukesti medeme eti, pos agenithi is aphanis mon. Let me move that over a little bit. Nomi therion, pas o dia porevomenos diaptis Syrii, ke kinisi tas hiras aftu. Who says in her heart, a leg is speaking in cardias, cardiac arrest, the cardiac. I am, ego, I, and the ego eimi. We see that in the New Testament. We see that with God being, Jesus saying, I am. And they said, I am. Could maybe even tie that into, I wouldn't go as far as to tie it into them saying that they are the I am, but gives you an idea on how these words were used. When you see it in the Old Testament, it's just fantastic. I just love it because the Hebrew, Old Testament, Greek, New Testament, you don't have the correlation like you do with the Greek Old and the Greek New. So you can see these structures and how they're used. I am, and there is none after me any longer. That's what these people were saying. Their pride. Well, that's what they kind of said, had that pride when the Assyrians, which were from Nineveh, came to Hezekiah outside of the walled city of Jerusalem, and they were boasting and prideful in how they did all these things and destroyed all these nations and gods. And then it continues, oh, how it was for extinction, aphanismon, phantom, a pasture of wild beasts. Everyone traveling through her shall whistle and shall shake his head. Kinesi, we have kinetic energy. Kinetics has to do with movement. Shall shake his hands. The chiropractor, Hiras, will shake his hands. So we see right here with this prideful arrogance of a people that thinks that they can do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, and that they're the ones that are doing it. It's not God, but it's their power and their wealth and their intelligence and intellect, all these things. They ignore God, and they say that they are the ones. how they're going to fall. And we can, of course, take that even into individuals and how our groups of peoples and this pride of ignoring God and taking on the wonderful things that has come upon them or ourselves, and ignoring that everything is done by God's grace in our lives. And so this chapter brings this out from peoples, and it spreads out to the world. And we'll continue in the third chapter in the next seminar, and we'll be seeing you then. God bless.